that I had the feeling, angels were guiding me. Sometimes I even felt them. I had moments where I knew that angels were touching me. And you can consider this a plane of consciousness. So if you think about consciousness as something that has levels, then there are different levels that you can see or not see. Some people can see these things just like that. They don't ever do anything for it, they are just born that way. A lot of children can see these things, but when children talk to adults about it, adults tell them, well, you're just imagining it. Oh, you have an imaginary friend. Well, it might not be, it might be something else. And when I talk about these things, I can already, depending on who listens to this, they will listen to it in a very different manner. Some people might think, okay, that guy's really nuts and they will never listen to anything I say ever again. And then some people might listen to this, find it interesting. And then some people might listen to this and seeing themselves, shaking with nodding with their heads because they actually have experienced similar things. And I, for instance, have never heard Ramdas talk about anything in terms of, dark spirits and possession. He mainly talks about love and purification. So, in some way it is hard to know whether it is true or not, but I know that there are web pages on the internet where they talk a lot about these things, how to know whether you have a spirit inside of you, the signs, the side effects, and all kinds of stuff. And I think one page is the Spiritual Research Foundation, where I found some information on these things. And I also realized, I don't have to deal with this every day all the time. Because when I walk around in that state of consciousness, it's quite unnerving because you pick up things from people where you realize you're actually not talking to the person. And why is that? Because the person is actually not conscious. A lot of people, they are not conscious. And that is to my understanding, alright? Whatever you believe in, you can believe in that. But I have made experiences where I realized that I wasn't always myself for a huge part of my life. That from one point on, where I was asked that question, do you believe the earth is round or flat? I kind of became conscious and I started to question my reality. Most people don't question their reality. They think everything they say comes from themselves. They think everything they think comes from themselves. And they believe that you are you and I am I. But the fact is that there are things that can take hold of us. That is one plane of consciousness. And there was a point where I said to myself, okay, this is actually making me anxious if I all the time need to, or if I all the time pick up these kind of truth or vibes of people, being not themselves. So what I did was I kind of made a decision to close myself more to that again. So you have the ability to enter certain states of consciousness, but you can also make the decision to close yourself to them again. Because when you realize that it's actually not helping you right now on your way, you can close yourself to it. And sometimes it is enough to simply know that these things exist, but you don't have to all the time be fully aware of it. So this is one plane of consciousness. And another plane of consciousness might be to be unconscious. You know, I have just visited some planes of consciousness through psychedelics and sometimes maybe through meditation or something. In the end, I believe consciousness, you know, just means you becoming conscious or unconscious. But I don't want to dive now too deep into that definition, but more talk about, you know, the feeling of kind of being crazy. And to me, being crazy or being on the verge of getting crazy always is before I am kind of on the verge of a breakthrough. Not before, but when I'm on the verge of a breakthrough on my spiritual path, I usually feel that craziness coming up. And it's that kind of feeling where it's the kind of feeling that feels like you're hanging on the edge, you're literally hanging on the edge, and you're just hanging with one hand on a cliff, and you're about to fall. So it's a mixture of kind of fear of death or something, like this unknown that you're about to fall, and you know, you are afraid that nobody's gonna catch you. And it's this inner restlessness and feeling of uneasiness, this one step more and you're gonna drop into an abyss that is completely pitch black and completely filled with the unknown, and you don't want to do it. I often had this also before I was doing some psychedelic substances, especially before I was doing ayahuasca or jurema. I often had this feeling of, whoa, this is a big step, like when I'm gonna do this, I'm not sure who I will be afterwards. And this is also the feeling that makes me feel crazy often, that when I change so much in a short period of time because of my experiences, and these experiences can be quite extreme, especially with psychedelics, but also without, if you make decisions that are not in line with the person you were before. So you've gone through a series of changes, and suddenly you are faced with a decision that you never made before, or you are faced with a decision that you have been confronted with, but you always decided differently, and then suddenly, instead of saying no, you say yes, and then you can get that feeling of, oh my god, who am I now? You know, who am I when I do this now? You know, for example, you never quit your job. I mean, you maybe changed your job a couple of times, but you always had, you know, another job in line. And now you know, your heart tells you, you have to quit your job. And you are not to look for another one. So what do? You go to your boss and you say, I want to resign. And then you resign, and in that moment where you resign, you actually feel kind of thrilled, you know, there's this, wow, nice, you know. And then you go back home and you sit alone in your room and you start thinking like, oh my god, what have I done? And everything starts to crumble around you, your whole security system you have built up for yourself. And you start to wonder, am I insane? Why would I ever do that? Why did I quit my job? And then you talk to your family and, you tell them, oh, I quit my job and I don't have anything else. And they say, are you crazy? Why did you do that? And you said, I don't know, I just did it. And, I'm scared and what to do. And they ask you, why did you do that? And you try to explain, well, I had that feeling, I had to do it. Well, are you stupid? Are you crazy? Unless your family is, has gone through similar things. But most people are very, very much on the security side, everything should be safe, they don't like big changes. A lot of families, they don't like it when, people of their family change too much. They like if everybody stays the same, if they believe that everybody's like a constant and nobody really can change. And most people say, yeah, humans are beings of routine. Well, you can break out of any routine, but a lot of people don't like that. Well, didn't you always do it like this? And then suddenly you change and, they don't know how to deal with that. Suddenly you're vegan or something. And especially when it comes to, for example, quitting your job or, you're studying and your heart just tells you just want to, stop it. You don't want to finish your study anymore because you realize that wasn't you and you don't want to finish that. So, you just throw it all away and they say, well, are you nuts? You spent so much money on that. Well, I couldn't take it anymore. I just had to quit this. And they will make you feel like it's a problem and, are you crazy? You throw all of this away, all these years of work and the money we put in you, They feel like because they invested money in you, maybe your family supported you financially, and then you throw it away, they feel like they've wasted their money. But it was still an experience, But they can't force you, you're not their slave. Just because they paid for your study doesn't mean you have to finish it. If it's not what you want to do anymore, then you have the right to change your opinion at any point. But your surroundings will think, you don't know what you're doing, you're crazy, or, whatever they might think. And especially if you start talking to them about that you took psychedelics or that you feel like angels are guiding you, very few people are able to understand these kind of concepts. Because somebody who talks to angels is usually crazy and you put them in an asylum. Simply because society doesn't know how to deal with that kind of stuff, and also they don't want to look at it. So most people in our society are simply unconscious. They are just money-driven animals, you can say. It's basically like that. Because they are just living a life that has been created for them, and not a life that they create for themselves. So when you begin to become more conscious, you will start to create your own life under your own terms. And you will begin to question a lot of things, and you will begin to lay down a lot of your old behaviors, and you will begin to lay down things you always did that way. So I started out, for example, if you change your breakfast routine, I started getting annoyed at myself because I always ate oats for breakfast. And when I wanted to change that, because I realized, I don't want to always eat oats for breakfast, so I often eat rice with lentils for breakfast now, like savory instead of sweet. And a lot of people, they come and they say, well, I could never do that. Well, my old me also could never do that. My old me also could have never written a book. My old me could have also never created a podcast. So only because I allowed myself to change, I changed. But I also went through these stages where people just were shaking their heads of what I was doing, But I always knew in a way what I was doing. I knew what I was doing when I was walking barefoot for years, because it changed my whole posture. It made me stronger and more resilient to disease. Because if you walk around barefoot in winter, you know, it looks crazy, but, you know, it makes you more resilient. It's a strength of character. And yes, it's also strength of character to stop smoking. And it's also strength of character to stop smoking, sorry. If I said that already, then I say it again. It's a strength of character to stop smoking. It's a strength of character to go also without psychedelics. But it's also strength of character to use psychedelics, because there's a lot of fear involving psychedelics, because psychedelics can induce a huge change. And I know that a lot of people, for example, you suddenly start to grow out your hair, and you suddenly start to grow a beard, and you start to wear different kinds of clothes, and they will say, well, now he's done it, he's gone nuts, you know, you can't talk to him anymore because he will only talk about these weird, I don't know, spiritual things. So, you know, here's your filter. Here is your filter, because anyone who wants to question the change you're going through is going to hold you back. And anyone who keeps challenging you on your beliefs is basically holding you back, because they are trying to keep you as the person that you were, because they are clinging to an old friend that doesn't exist anymore. You've simply changed, and they're still in the belief that people don't change. Like most people say, people don't change. So the feeling of getting crazy has different kind of faces, and I sometimes felt like I was going crazy because my surroundings were telling me that I was going crazy. I, for example, had a period in my life where I was in a relationship and we went to work together. And she was considerably younger than me. I mean, 7 years. It's not considerably, but it's still a bit. And I don't think age really matters that much, but it was just the phase we were in our lives was just completely different. And we were somewhere cooking together. As a job, we were cooking. And it was a kind of a seminar. And there were things happening at this seminar that I just couldn't agree with. I just felt like, well, this is all wrong, because it was a seminar for self-improvement. But somehow some things were really weird. For instance, the first thing that was weird was that we were a couple, and one of the, well, how do you call them? Maybe a guide? You know, they had these three kind of teachers or guides or people who are leaders, maybe, who were leading this seminar. And the rest were all just whoa, the word is missing. The word is missing. Let me please check that quickly. Such a simple word. Such a simple word, and I don't get it. Like, where are these words? Participants. So you had about, let's say, 20 participants, 3 leaders, and then 2 cooks, which was me and my girlfriend at the time. And one of these leaders was actively flirting with my girlfriend. And I already thought that was weird. And then the next thing that happened was that the way they treated us was really strange. And they really tried to break us apart or something. But when I tried to talk about this to my girlfriend, she would deny it. Because she thought, well, no, they're actually nice people. So she was more being dragged to their side than to mine. And I thought, well, am I feeling, am I going crazy now? Maybe I'm not drawing a very good picture here, but let me try something else. I was once in a situation also at the same place, different seminar, we were cooking again. And imagine the situation. You are standing in a hallway and there were 4 people. One was my girlfriend, then another girl, 2 men. One kind of 60, you know, he was a leader, and one maybe 30, also a leader. And I don't know how the situation started anymore, but I was standing there and suddenly the talk was about, well, are you okay? Somebody asked me, this older guy. He said, are you okay? I said, yes. Well, if you need a hug, you know, you can tell us. And I said, I don't need a hug. And I was fairly certain that I don't need a hug. And then he kept asking like, well, if you need a hug from a man, you know, then, you know, you just can talk to us about this. And kind of everybody wanted to talk me into this, that I needed a hug. And I knew very certain, because I'm very certain about the things that I want and that I don't want, that I didn't want a hug from a man, you know? And even if I might have wanted a hug from my father, you know, maybe there was a part in me that wanted a hug from my father, but nobody can give that to me, you know, unless I want them to. And I didn't want to be hugged from anyone there. And then I didn't know how to react in this situation, because everybody was so convinced that I need help or I needed a hug or something. And what then happened was, he asked me once more, do you want a hug? And I said no. And then, you know, maybe I didn't sound as convincing because they all gave me the feeling that, you know, I actually wanted it, although I knew I didn't want it. So he was nodding to that younger guy, and he suddenly came to me and pushed his scrotum, his loin, or however you call that, onto mine and hugged me, like, but more, you know, in this kind of weird sexual way. And I felt disgusted. I felt like my boundaries weren't met at all. And on the inside, I was so angry about myself that I wasn't able to set up boundaries the right way. But the thing is that I have realized, once you begin to change and you get to stages where you don't need anything from anyone, it scares people. Why? Because some people live from it, that they can give you something. And with give you something means maybe advice or a hug or anything. I was standing there, I didn't need anything from anyone. But they gave me the feeling I didn't know what I wanted. So I felt like I was going nuts. So later on, I often wondered whether I was being stupid, whether, you know, I thought I didn't need a hug, but I actually needed it. But I came to the conclusion that I didn't want it and they didn't respect me. And that I wasn't able, that was my mistake, that I wasn't able to fully set my boundaries there. Because I should have said to that guy, if you touch me, I will slap you. And no, I don't want to resort to violence, but some people don't understand it unless you become very clear. And I should have put out my hand and stopped him before he could get to me, but I was just so, maybe the word is stunned. I was simply stunned because I couldn't understand what was happening there. And maybe it doesn't sound that dramatic to you, but to me it really was, because I clearly said what I wanted, which was no hug. I clearly said I don't want a hug, I don't need a hug. But they didn't respect that. And I had it one more time, and I remember it also quite clearly. It was with a group of friends, and I was going through a time where I also felt like that was way before that. That was probably at least half a year before that thing in the hallway with the hug happened. I was sitting with friends at a lakeside around a fire, and I think there was some MDMA involved. And what these substances often do with me, and that is mushrooms, that is LSD or MDMA or something, that for a couple of hours I don't feel really thirsty, I don't feel hungry, I don't really need anything, you know, because it brings me to a place in myself where I'm just in love. And when you're in love, you're kind of satisfied, you know. It's like a baby that was just fed, and you're warm and you cuddled up and your mother is hugging you. You don't need anything, you're just, you know, all your needs are met. That's how you can imagine that feeling. And I was sitting with my friends around the fire, and I didn't need to talk to anyone. I just wanted to sit there and look into the fire. That was enough for me. But the thing is, some of my friends, or people that I hung out with during that time, you know, they were kind of in that, you know, we are spiritually helping people. So we are kind of not therapists, but like shamans, you know. None of these people were fit to be shamans in any way. Simply because, you know, you can only heal people when you healed yourself. If you didn't heal yourself, how can you heal anyone else? And I've seen them trying to heal people while they were actually just forcing it on them. And they didn't ask them whether they wanted this, they just forced it on them because these people weren't strong enough to say, leave me alone, like, what's your deal? And as I was sitting there, first of all, the first thing that happened was there was this kind of, well, we were there with probably 5 to 6 people, and I and 2 of my other friends, there was some kind of bad vibes between us sometimes. So this one guy wanted to do this shamanic work on us, so he took us together and he made us hug each other, which I already didn't want, but you know, let's just do him whatever he does. And he started doing this all kind of blowing, you know, like blowing in ears and all kinds of stuff, but I didn't want anything from him. And he did it then first with 3 of us, and then I think single sessions,